are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for all right, and we are back here on.
Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Monday, January 21st. We have a lot to talk about on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. It makes the show more lively, more entertaining. Between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers, we appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, gsmcpodcast.net. That is gsmcpodcast.net. As my camera is acting up here. We did not have a show yesterday, so I hope everybody had a nice weekend, and we are going to basically cover every single game from this past weekend, recap it, all the divisional round games, as well as the national championship game from last night. We'll get into that with Ohio State knocking off Notre Dame to become national champions. So that's basically the rundown for the show. So we are going to start off the show by talking about the Ravens-Bills game. The Bills narrowly defeating the Ravens 27-25. And let's kind of get into that now. And look, going into this game, I talked about it. There was a lot on the line when it came to the quarterbacks, especially with Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, because these are two guys that have kind of been accustomed to coming up short in the postseason over the last several years now. And this was a big game for both quarterbacks, and they both made their fair share of plays. Now, Josh Allen did not have a monster game when it came to statistics, but he was on the winning side of this game. Lamar Jackson had a couple of turnovers in this game. He did not have a great first half, however, was much better in the second half, and he did put the Ravens in a position to tie the game. And unfortunately, that did not happen, but we will get into that in a moment. But I will say, the first drive of the game, the Ravens went right down the field, and they scored a touchdown. So they made a statement on that drive, and you thought, okay, here we go. But then the Bills, they answered on their first drive. They went down the field, and kind of similar to what happened with the Denver game last week, except they actually did get a touchdown. They both teams scored touchdowns on their first possessions of the game. And then on the Ravens' second drive of the game, Lamar Jackson threw a pick. There was some miscommunication with him, and I believe it was Rashad Bateman. Yeah, he was trying to hit Rashad Bateman. There was miscommunication there. It led to a pick. But thankfully for the Ravens, that didn't lead to any points. So the Bills punted on their drive. And then Lamar Jackson, I don't know what happened on this fumble here, but he ends up getting tackled by Damar Hamlin, and he just straight up drops the ball. Like, it's not like Damar Hamlin knocked the ball out, and we saw that throughout the weekend. Players knocking out the ball on offensive, or defensive players knocking the ball out on offensive players, pulling a Charles Tillman there. But yeah, so I don't know what happened, but yeah, Lamar Jackson, he gets sacked. They credit Damar Hamlin with the sack and the fumble, and Von Miller picks it up. He returns it 39 yards. And that sets the Bills up at the Ravens 24, and Josh Allen from 1 yard out scores a touchdown. That makes it 14-7. Now, the Ravens did go down the field. They did answer. They got a field goal to make it 14-10. But then the Bills went 9 plays, 70 yards down the field, and Josh Allen once again scored another rushing touchdown. He didn't have any passing touchdowns through the air in this game, and actually threw for the ball for only 127 yards in the game. But yeah, it was 21-10, not looking good. But the Ravens, they looked better in the second half. Like I said, Lamar Jackson put together a very good second half. It's just the turnovers, kind of put them behind, especially the fumble. The interception, not so much, but again, who knows what would have happened if they didn't throw a pick. Maybe they could have gotten points out of that drive. We'll never know. But we go to the second half. The Bills punt. They went 3 and out very quickly. Ravens then scored a field goal to make it 21-13. Bills punted again, and then they went on a 7-play, 80-yard drive, the Ravens did, down the field, and Derrick Henry from 5 yards out scores a touchdown. I believe that was a direct snap to Henry. I could be wrong, but either way, scores a rushing touchdown. That makes it 21-19. They did go for 2, but they didn't convert it, so it was 21-19. Bills then went down the field on their next drive. They went 10 plays, 37 yards. They get a Tyler Bass field goal to make it 24-19. And then the Ravens are driving. They went for it on 4th and 1, and we've seen this recently, where you have the tight end take the direct snap and they run their own tush push. So they went for it on 4th and 1 from their own 39. They converted. And then Lamar Jackson, he connects with Mark Andrews for 16 yards, so they're on the plus side of the field, and Mark Andrews ends up fumbling, and the Bills turn that into a field goal. So now it's up to Lamar Jackson. Try to go down the field and lead a potential game-tying drive. And that's what he did. They went 8 plays, 88 yards down the field. There was a fumble on the drive, but the Ravens recovered it. They got down to the Bills' 24-yard line, and Lamar Jackson had all day to throw on this play. And eventually he finds Isaiah Likely for a 24-yard touchdown, and then they go for 2. And it was the right play call. Mark Andrews was open. Lamar threw it to him, and Mark Andrews ends up dropping it. And then the Ravens go for the onside kick. They don't get it. And then the Bills pick up a first down because the game still wasn't over yet. Ty Johnson picks up the first down on the first play, 17-yard run, and that was it. And everyone is all over Mark Andrews. And I did think of this play before I even saw it on social media, but if you remember from a few years ago, they ran a 2-point conversion play against Pittsburgh, and it was to Mark Andrews. And I think the pass by Lamar was a little bit too out in front of Andrews because Andrews was reaching up with one hand to try to catch it, so that ended up being incomplete. Then they showed one the same year with Tyler Huntley, and that one was a tougher catch. There were Packers defenders around Andrews. That really wasn't on Andrews. Tyler Huntley was trying to fit it in, thread the needle, and they didn't convert on that. This one, this is on Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews has to catch that ball. Now, I was listening to what Chris Sims had to say on this play yesterday, and he said, he was on the Kay Adams show, and he was saying that Lamar's got to throw that ball sooner. And he's probably right, but ultimately, Andrews has to make that play. He has to make that play. That was right in the breadbasket. Even if Lamar, should have threw it sooner, Mark Andrews has to hold on to that ball. And he didn't. And the Ravens end up losing the game. Now, is it all on Mark Andrews? Lamar Jackson didn't play well in the first half. The defense, they let the Bills go right down the field in their first drive. It's more than just one guy. Now, is Mark Andrews a big reason why the Rangers lost or the Ravens lost? Yeah. Because he fumbled the ball. The Ravens were driving. And, the Bills turned that into points. And then this was a play that should have been made. And this would have tied the game. Now, there was time left in the game, so Josh Allen and that offense could have went down the field and scored, or set up Tyler Bass for a game-tying or go-ahead field goal, game-winning field goal, and then that would have been it. But we'll never know because Andrews didn't make the play. And, you have people on social media talking about trading him and cutting him and all that. It's tough because Mark Andrews is a very good player. He's coming off of a solid year, and now he's got to think about this the entire offseason. And this is tough on Lamar Jackson because, once again, his team comes up short in the playoffs. Now, I would have liked to have seen Derrick Henry get more involved. I mean, in this game, he didn't really do a ton. I mean, he did have one big run at one point. He did have a drop early on in the game. That was on the first drive of the game, but the Ravens turned that into a touchdown anyways. But he only had 16 carries for 84 yards and a touchdown. I would have liked to have seen him maybe have more than just 16 touches. Especially in this weather. Because, snow wasn't as much of a factor in this game as the Rams-Eagles game, but this was a Derrick Henry type of game. But then again, the Ravens were playing from behind too. So looking at the stats though, so we talked about Henry. Lamar Jackson, 18-25, 254 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick. Justice Hill had 50 yards on the ground. Lamar Jackson had 39 yards on the ground. The Ravens ran the ball for 176 yards, which is, pretty good. Isaiah Likely, their leading receiver, 4 receptions for 73 yards and a touchdown. Rashad Bateman had that touchdown early on. He had a 42-yard catch in this game as well. That set up, I don't know, did that set up one of the field goals? Yeah, actually, so they got down to the Bills 2. This was a key stop by the Bills. So you get the ball down at the 2-yard line after the catch by Bateman, and then you have Henry lose a yard. Then Lamar Jackson gets sacked, and then there was an incompletion trying to hit Henry over the middle, and that led to a Justin Tucker 26-yard field goal. I feel like at that point, you still got to try to give the ball to Henry. Let him punch it in from there. So that was a big drive by the Bills, holding the Ravens to only 3 points. But yeah, Bateman, he was pretty good, this year. They gave him a new contract, had 9 touchdown receptions in the regular season. They were without Zay Flowers. He stepped up over these last 2 games. But, yeah, that he was their Likely was their leading receiver. Bateman was good. Andrews had 5 receptions for 61 yards, but he had the fumble. Lamar Jackson had a fumble in this game. The Ravens defense only 1 sack of Josh Allen, who went 16-22 for 127 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. And the Bills ran the ball for 147 yards. Josh Allen had 2 rushing touchdowns. Ray Davis had a rushing touchdown in this game. James Cook, 67 yards on the ground. Khalil Shakir, 6 receptions for 67 yards. James Cook, 3 for 15. Matt Collins, 1 for 12. Yeah, the passing game didn't wow you for the Bills, but it didn't have to. They built up a lead, and Josh Allen played mistake-free football. Bills defense, 2 sacks of Lamar Jackson. We just talked about one of them. And the Ravens actually, they outgained the Bills. 416 yards of total offense as opposed to the Bills' 273. But the difference in the game, turnovers. And that was kind of the common theme throughout these 4 games, turnovers. Turnovers were the difference. And missed opportunities. So the Ravens, they go home. The Bills, they advance to the AFC Championship game to once again take on the Kansas City Chiefs. And we'll see how that goes. We'll preview that game. We'll talk about it. We'll make our picks. We'll talk about it throughout the week. But obviously, we'll officially preview it on Friday. But yeah, Ravens come up short again. Let me know what you guys think about this game. What were your takeaways from it? Let me know in the comments. So when we come back from our first break of the show, we will talk about the biggest upset of the weekend, and that was the Commanders taking down the Detroit Lions to advance to the NFC Championship game. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the second part of the show, we're going to now talk about the Commanders and their shocking upset over the Detroit Lions to advance to the NFC Championship Game. And when I talked about the 1 seeds and who was more likely to be upset, I did say it was the Lions, and I was right. Now, I didn't think the Lions were going to lose. I just thought when you compared the Lions and the Chiefs, and how the Chiefs just never lose in the divisional round, and that continued this past weekend, and the Lions with the injuries that they have dealt with all year, well, as the year has gone on, I just said, you know what, it could be the Lions, and that's what ended up happening. And there was a lot of scoring in this game. The Commanders won 45-31, and I don't think the Commanders punted in this game. Actually, no, they did punt once. They punted towards the end of the game. Or no, they punted to start off the second half. Lions, I think, only punted once. But it was a high-scoring affair. The Lions just could not get stops when they really needed to. They didn't. And on top of that, similar to what happened with the game we just talked about, turnovers. The Lions turned the ball over. Jared Goff, 3 interceptions in this game. He also lost a fumble as well. It was not great. And you wonder, was this the Lions' last chance before their window has closed? Because we'll talk about this tomorrow, but Ben Johnson is going to be the next head coach for the Bears. That happened. He will be officially taking the Bears' job. We'll see what happens with Aaron Glenn. But now all of a sudden, you have these 2 great coordinators, and they could be gone. So that could be a problem. But you got to give the Commanders a lot of credit here. Jaden Daniels was spectacular in this game. 22 of 31, 299 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Made some great throws. That pass to De'Ami Brown was probably his best throw of the night. I forget where. Oh, yeah, so it happened on the drive that put them up 10-7. That set them up. Also, the other thing, too, is, they gave the Lions, a taste of their own medicine because they went for it on 4th down a handful of times, and they converted. The only time that they didn't was they had both Jaden Daniels and Marcus Mariota on the field at the same time. They tried going for it, and they didn't get it. This was their first drive of the game. They got down to the Detroit 28-yard line. It was 4th and 1. They did a direct snap to Mariota and got no push, and the Lions took over. They went 3 for 4 on 4th down. Lions went 2 for 2 on 4th down. 3rd down efficiency was not great for both teams. Commanders were 4 for 12, and the Lions were 3 for 9. And the Lions also outgained the Commanders, 521 yards to 481 yards. Commanders did possess the ball longer. Lions picked up 30 first downs. Commanders 27 first downs. But, again, turnovers was an issue for the Lions in this game. The Commanders still have not turned the ball over yet. And I was going to bring this up. I don't know which segment I was going to bring it up in. But the 4 teams that have advanced to the conference championship games, 0 turnovers combined. When talking about the Bills, Commanders, Chiefs, and Eagles, no turnovers at all. And we'll see if we get any turnovers from any of these teams on Sunday. but that's impressive. But to kind of go through it, so like I said, the Lions punted to start off the game. Commanders, they turned it over on downs. Lions went up 7-0 on their second drive. They went 6 plays, 71 yards, and you had Jahmyr Gibbs score a rushing touchdown, so that put the Lions up 7-0. Commanders kicked a field goal on their next drive to make it 7-3. On 3rd and 1, Jared Goff ended up getting sacked. Fumble was recovered by Frankie Louvu, and that made it... so then the Commanders, they responded. They went down the field to make it 10-7. And then the Lions answered. So, back and forth this game went early on. You had a nice catch by Amon-Ra St. Brown for 34 yards. And later in the drive, Jared Goff, as he's falling to the ground, throws a pass to Sam Laporta, who makes an incredible one-handed catch. So that put them up 14-10. Then the Commanders, they responded again. Terry McLaurin, a 58-yard touchdown. He's able to weave his way through the Lions defenders. There was there was good blocking there. He was able to weave through and, tiptoe down the sideline. Lions were not able to tackle him, and he ended up scoring. And that made it 17-14. And then this is where I was starting to think, this is not looking good for the Lions. They might end up losing this game, potentially. And that was when Jared Goff threw a pick six. Now, Goff actually got injured on the play, took a vicious hit from, I believe it was Frankie Louvu, and he was evaluated for a concussion and was probably playing with a concussion because he did not look right after that. So actually, Teddy Bridgewater came into the game. So they were down 24-14, the Lions. Teddy Bridgewater comes in. Jahmyr Gibbs, 14-yard run. Well, first, there was a false start. Gibbs gets most of it back with a 14-yard run. Then Bridgewater connected with Gibbs for 3 yards, and then you had an end around with Jameson Williams, and he scores a 61-yard touchdown. So that made it 24-21. Then Goff comes back in the game. But the Commanders, before that, they go 7 plays, 70 yards. You had the 38-yard pass to De'Ami Brown. So he had a couple of big catches in this game. And later, Jaden Daniels connects with Zach Ertz on 3rd and goal to score the touchdown. And that made it 31-21. So Goff comes back in. The Lions are driving. But Goff underthrows the ball just a bit to Jameson Williams. That gets intercepted. So they don't get any points out of that drive. So, you could have went into the half. It could have been a one-score game. It was not. And Commanders did open up the second half punting. Lions scored a touchdown. Jahmyr Gibbs an 8-yard touchdown. But then the Commanders scored again. They went 15 plays, 70 yards, almost 8.5 minutes down the field. They went for it on 4th down. They got it on this drive. They went for it on 4th down twice. Actually, this was bad. This wasn't a turnover or anything, or the Commanders converting. It was just the Lions shooting themselves in the foot because they had too many men on the field at the 5, and that set up a 1st and goal, and they ended up scoring. Brian Robinson from 1 yard out scored. So that made it 38-28. Goff throws another interception. Actually, no, Goff didn't throw an interception. They did the trick play, the double reverse with Jameson Williams. He throws it, and that gets intercepted. And Jameson Williams should not have thrown that ball, but he ended up doing that. And that led to another Commanders touchdown. They went for it on 4th down again. Jaden Daniels connected with Terry McLaurin for a 12-yard reception. And then Jeremy McNichols scored from 1 yard out, and that made it 45-28. Lions did kick a field goal to make it 45-31 on their next drive. Commanders missed a field goal on their next drive, but Goff ended up throwing another pick. And that's all she wrote. That is all she wrote. Turnovers, turnovers, turnovers. And then, obviously, the too many men on the field was a killer penalty. But, yeah, Jaden Daniels was impressive. Like I said, 299 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. Brian Robinson, 77 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns. Jaden Daniels had 51 yards on the ground. Eckler had 47 yards on the ground. He had a 35-yard run earlier in the game. They ran the ball for almost 200 yards, 182 yards and 3 touchdowns. De'Ami Brown had a couple of big catches, like I said, 6 receptions for 98 yards. Terry McLaurin, 4 for 87 and a touchdown. He'll be playing in his first NFC Championship game. Eckler, 4 for 41. Zach Ertz had the touchdown. Jamison Crowder had 2 for 25. And the Commanders, 4 takeaways in this game. Well, actually, 5 takeaways in this game, because you had the fumble and then the 4 picks, 1 thrown by Jameson Williams and the other 3 were thrown by Goff. And then the Commanders' defense, 2 sacks of Goff in the game, who went 23 of 40 for 313 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. Jahmyr Gibbs, he finishes the season strong, 105 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns. Jameson Williams had 61 yards on the ground and a touchdown. David Montgomery, 7 carries for 28 yards. Goff also had a scramble for 7 yards. And the Lions ran the ball for 200 yards, 3 rushing touchdowns. Amon-Ra St. Brown, a big day, 8 receptions for 137 yards. Jahmyr Gibbs, 6 for 70. The Lions defense, no sacks of Jane Daniels in the game. And yeah, that's all she wrote for the Lions. A disappointing end to their season. So when you look at the top 7 quarterbacks, the top highest paid quarterbacks, now you extend it to the top 7. Remember when I was talking about the top 5 and he extended it and Justin Herbert and Jared Goff were in the top 7? Well, Jared Goff did not come through, and the top 7 highest paid quarterbacks, 0 playoff wins, 0 between those 7 quarterbacks. It's unbelievable. And Dan Campbell was emotional after the game. It's tough. It's tough because they had an incredible year. That NFC North, we talked about being the best division in football. They had no playoff wins. 0. And they're going home. They're losing Ben Johnson. They're probably losing Aaron Glenn. And they got to figure it out. They had a lot of injuries this year. That played a role in why they lost this game because they just could not stop the Commanders. And on top of that, too, running that play with Jameson Williams where he's looking to throw it and he throws the pick, you shouldn't be doing that in that moment. Shouldn't. Because it leads to an interception, and then, that basically was all she wrote at that point. Again, Jared Goff got hurt in the game. He was able to come back in and finish it, but he just was not sharp, turning the ball over. It's just turnovers, and just on top of that, your defense is not able to get stops. That is ultimately what cost the Lions this game here. And some people say, well, Ben Johnson shouldn't have been taking interviews because this was a big week, and maybe, because of that, he wasn't fully focused on the game plan going in. Either way, they lost this game. And this Commanders team continues to make me look foolish because, again, I had them winning 4 games, didn't even have them sniffing the playoffs. And they are 1 game away from going to the Super Bowl. And they'll be taking on an Eagles team, which we will talk about in the next segment. It's going to be a good game. It's going to be a good game. The games that we got for Championship Sunday, they're going to be pretty good. So, give them all the credit in the world. Dan Campbell, Cliff Kingsbury, Jane Daniels, that team, they are playing with a lot of confidence right now. They could be going on a run like the Giants once did. Because the Giants, they beat an NFC South team, right, in the Falcons. They beat a 15-1 Packers team. The Commanders, they beat, a 15-2 team, right, in the Lions, an NFC North team. And now they're going to be taking on a division rival in the NFC Championship game this upcoming week, which is not going to be easy, because the Eagles are really good. But the Commanders beat them once this year. And, the first matchup between the two when, both quarterbacks were playing, Jalen Hurts, played that whole game. But, Jane Daniels was a little banged up in the meeting in Philly the last time they went against each other in Philly. So we'll see how it goes. But just a disappointing end for the Lions. And like I said, they're losing Ben Johnson. They're going to probably lose Aaron Glenn, and we'll see how they regroup. But, this could have been the year. And it just ends with a thud. So, yeah, let me know what you guys think, though, about this game. What were your takeaways from it? Let me know in the comments. So we're going to take our next break. And then when we come back, we will talk about the Rams-Eagles game. Eagles picking up the win. We'll talk about that, how it unfolded when we come back from our next break. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third topic of the show today, we will now get into the Eagles-Rams game from Sunday, and very snowy game in the second half. They even posted it on social media. I forget which Instagram account, but, what a difference from the first half to the second half, because that snow really came down. And, it didn't matter for Saquon Barkley and that rushing attack of the Eagles. But you know what? Matthew Stafford also made some good throws in the game late. But the Eagles ultimately picked up the win. And it was off of their running game, like I said, as well as, them picking up some turnovers in the game as well. So, yeah, the Eagles got the ball to start off the game. And Jalen Hurts from 44 yards out, I believe. Yeah, so 44 rushing touchdown. Jake Elliott actually missed the PAT. But they went up 6-0 pretty quickly. They went 6 plays, 74 yards. But then the Rams responded. They went 13 plays, 67 yards down the field. Matthew Stafford connected with Tyler Higbee for a touchdown. And, the game was on. Both teams exchanged punts. And then Saquon Barkley, his first rushing touchdown of the game, he went 62 yards. That put them up 13-7. Rams then kicked a field goal. And it was 13-10 at the half. And then that's when the snow really began to come down. You had the Rams tie the game on a field goal. Eagles responded with a Jake Elliott field goal to make it 16-13. And then the Rams actually got a safety. Eagles were backed up. They get a safety. They made it 16-15. And you thought, okay, is the momentum starting to swing in the Rams' favor? And Kyron Williams had a costly fumble. That led to another field goal. And then Stafford, he ended up getting sacked and losing the ball. And that led to another field goal. So that made it 22-15. And then Eagles got the ball back after the Rams punted. They went 3-and-out. Saquon Barkley scored another touchdown. This was the first play of their next drive. 78-yard touchdown. At that point, you thought, yeah, this game's over. Rams got no chance. It was like 4.5 minutes left in the game. However, Rams went 10 plays, 70 yards very quickly. Got some big chunks on this drive, and it led to a Matthew Stafford to Kobe Parkinson 4-yard touchdown. So that made it 28-22. They got the Eagles to go 3-and-out. They got the ball back, and, they were set up by a 37-yard reception by Puka Nacua. And, they got down to the Eagles' 23-yard line. Hold on a second. I don't know why it's set up like this, but yeah, so they got it to 3rd and 2. They were at the Eagles' 22-yard line. And Matthew Stafford ends up getting sacked by Jalen Carter, who had a good game. And I saw when Dan Orlovsky was breaking down the play. Had Stafford had enough time, Tyler Higbee was wide open over the middle. And if Stafford hits him, it's possible Higbee scores, and we're having a very different conversation today. But that didn't happen. Eagles were getting some good pressure on Stafford. There was another time where, the pocket collapsed on him. Rams' interior O-line just let the Eagles break through and get to Stafford. But yeah, so they go for it on 4th and 11. They don't pick it up, and the Eagles take over. They win the game. And there were a couple this game was closer than it should have been because, the Eagles, they hurt themselves at certain points in the game. They were doing the tush push, and there was a false start, so then that kind of led to a field goal. A.J. Brown had a drop in this game. Like I said, Lane Johnson, he was the one that caused the penalty that set them back. Dallas Goedert had a big play in this game. That got called back because Mekhi Becton was an ineligible man downfield. So there was that. So this game could have maybe been a blowout, but because of some of those mistakes by the Eagles, it kept it close. But I thought the Rams defense stepped up when it needed to. They got the safety. It's just turnovers. Turnovers were a problem. Stafford and Kyron Williams fumble. Also, you had early on in the game, Demarcus Robinson had a big catch that set up the touchdown. This was for, I think it was, actually, was it on this drive? Or maybe it was on a different drive. But that should have been an interception. Oh, yeah, it was on the drive that led to the field goal to make it 13-10. It was a 48-yard reception by Demarcus Robinson, but that should have been picked off. But Demarcus Robinson, he ripped the ball away, and, that led to some points there for the Rams. But, the Eagles did hurt themselves. And, there's a lot of people on Jalen Hurts. He went 15-20 for 128 yards. No touchdowns, no interceptions. It was not great through the air. Dallas Goedert had 4 receptions for 56 yards. But a lot of people are on this passing game and saying it's got to get going because they're not going to be able to win games like this, down the line. Like, against the Commanders, it could be a shootout. And if they get to the Super Bowl, whether it's against Josh Allen or if it's against Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts in this passing game is going to have to get it going. But at the same time, it's like you got Saquon Barkley, who once again ran for over 200 yards against this Rams defense. And if you remember, you can go back and watch it, I said, I don't think Saquon's going to get 200 yards in this game again. Well, I didn't think he was going to get, 255, but he got 205, 26 carries, 2 touchdowns in the game. His longest run was a 78-yarder. And the Eagles ran the ball for almost 300 yards again on this Rams defense. 285 yards and 3 touchdowns. Jalen Hurts had the rushing touchdown early on in the game, and that's what makes him dangerous, as well as his ability to use his legs. The Rams just had no answers for this Eagles running game. And Saquon Barkley has taken that running game to another level. And you would like to see this Eagles passing game, get it going. And there have been games where that's been the case, where they have gotten it going. But listen, if Saquon Barkley is doing this, why are you going to go away from the run? But I get it. Because you want to see Jalen Hurts be more impactful on the game. And, the weather conditions played a role in it. I get it. But to me, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If Saquon Barkley is putting up these numbers, you don't want to go away from the run. But he's made all the difference for this team. He really has. Because, if the Eagles had DeAndre Swift in this game, and he was good for them last year, don't get me wrong. But if they had DeAndre Swift, do they win this game? I don't know. Saquon Barkley is a game breaker. And he just continues to show that over and over and over again. And the other thing, too, is this Eagles defense. 5 sacks of Matthew Stafford in the game. They had a couple of fumble recoveries. Zach Bond, who has been a great pickup for them. Also, Isaiah Rodgers had a fumble recovery in this game as well. This Eagles defense is really good. And this Eagles defense, you could probably say, probably make the argument, this Eagles defense is better than the defense that they had when they went to the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. Right? They probably don't have as many sacks as that defense did, because you remember, they had 4 players with, double-digit sacks. But this defense is very well-rounded. From their front 4 to their linebackers to their secondary. This is a well-rounded team. And this team could win the whole thing. I mean, look, I said it before the year started. I said this team could be what we saw a couple years ago. With the additions of Barkley, they fixed up the defense. I mean, early on it wasn't looking great for their defense, but they have really put it together. And, you know, the Commanders, whether it's the Commanders this weekend, even though the Commanders, you know, played well against them the last time they faced off against them. And then you got Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, you know, on the other side. You know, whatever offense has to go up against this defense, it's a problem. It is a problem. And we'll see what happens in this championship game. It's going to be an interesting game between these two NFC East opponents. But once again, turnovers was the common theme because, you know, the Rams, had they not turned the ball over, you know, who knows what happens. And you thought when it was 28-15, when Barkley scores that touchdown, game's over. But the Rams quickly go down the field. They get a touchdown. They get a stop. And, you know, if Stafford doesn't get sacked there, you know, who knows? But, you know, the Eagles are just a better team. And, you know, they proved that once again here. You know, weather definitely played a factor in some of the turnovers. But, listen, it is what it is. Everybody's playing through those conditions. So, yeah, I get it. When it comes to Jalen Hurts, you want to see him play a little bit better, you know, put up better numbers in the stat sheet. I get it. But he also didn't turn the ball over. You could say the safety, but that doesn't count as a turnover. But other than that, they played mistake-free football. And they're in the NFC Championship game once again. And, yeah, for the Rams, it was a good year. They started off the year 1-4. It looked like it was going to be another disaster, you know, kind of similar to what happened the year after they won the Super Bowl. But they got Cooper Kupp back. They got Puka Nacua back. They won their division. And, you know, they had a chance. And it's interesting because Matthew Stafford is going to take some time to think about his future. But, you know, he's playing good football down the stretch here. And I would imagine he is going to come back. You know, I think the Rams, they're right there. You know, Stafford, he put up over 300 yards in this game. You know, Nacua made some good catches. Like I said, the one, you know, on the last drive, that was a huge play. Demarcus Robinson had 3 catches for 74 yards. Puka Nacua 6 for 97. Stafford 2 touchdowns, 324 yards passing. Kyron Williams at over 100 yards rushing in the game. Cooper Kupp 5 receptions for 61 yards. He had a nice catch in this game. Tyler Higbee, you know, had the touchdown early on, 7 receptions for 54 yards. It's good to have him back. And, you know, hopefully, you know, you have him for a full season next year, you know, because they need him. And then the Rams defense, 7 sacks of Jalen Hurts in the game. And then you look at the total yards comparison. Rams had more yards than the Eagles, 402 yards to 350. And, you know, around the same in time of possession. But, yeah, they just they came up a little bit short there. So, yeah, let me know what you guys think about this game, though. What were your takeaways from it? Let me know in the comments. So, we are going to take our next break. When we come back, we will talk about the final game that we didn't get to yet from the divisional weekend, and that is the Chiefs defeating the Texans and once again advancing to the AFC Championship game. They will be taking on the Bills next week. So make sure to stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the fourth part of the show, let's get into talking about the Chiefs-Texans game, shall we? So this is the final game that we did not talk about yet. This was actually the first game to start off divisional weekend, but I kind of put it last just because the other games had more drama, in my opinion. Well, I mean, I think most people would agree with that. Yeah, but there were some things to take away from this game, and I'll get to that in a moment. But the Chiefs do pick up the win. They win 23-14. They advance to the AFC Championship game once again. Patrick Mahomes still has never lost in the divisional round, and they will be hosting another AFC Championship game. The Texans still have never won a divisional round playoff game, and they'll have to wait another year. And the Texans did show some fight in this game. You know, there is stuff to build off of from this season for the Texans. Now, their offense, C.J. Stroud, had a sophomore slump. And I'm hoping next year he has a big year. Because if you remember, I actually picked him to win MVP. I thought he was going to take that next step. They brought in Stephon Diggs. I thought he was going to have a big year. But he didn't have the year that I thought he was going to have, and a lot of people thought he was going to have. But you know what? They still won their division. They won a playoff game. And, once again, missed opportunities. There were some missed field goals in this game. They missed an extra point. They missed a field goal in this game, to make it, to tie the game, to make it 6-6. But, you also had the offensive line struggled. C.J. Stroud got sacked 8 times in this game. 8 times. George Karlaftis had 3 sacks alone. And actually, the special teams in general was just pretty rough for the Texans, because the first play of the game, the kickoff, you had a big return by the Chiefs. That brought them all the way down to the Houston 13-yard line. Well, actually, there's also an unsportsmanlike conduct on the Texans, and that set the Chiefs up at the 13. But actually, the Texans' defense did a great job, because after all that, big kickoff return, and then you had the unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, the Texans' defense made the Chiefs go 3-and-out. They actually had -1 yards on the drive. So that made it 3-0. Then the Texans went 10 plays, 68 yards, and Fairbairn kicks a 30-yard field goal. So that made it 3-3. The Chiefs, they ended up getting a field goal on their next drive. You had a roughing the passer call on Will Anderson on 3rd and 8, and that extended the drive. And Butker, later in that drive, kicked a 36-yard field goal to make it 6-3. And that was the one roughing the passer penalty that, one of the couple of penalties that people did not agree with, I believe. So, yeah, that made it 6-3 Chiefs. Again, Texans, they could have made it 6-6 with Fairbairn. He ends up missing the 55-yarder. And then the Chiefs end up scoring a touchdown on their next drive. He had a 49-yard reception by Travis Kelce, which later in the drive led to a Kareem Hunt 1-yard touchdown. So that made it 13-3. It was 13-6 at the half. And then the Texans, they had the ball for almost the entire third quarter. They went 15 plays, 82 yards, and that led to a Joe Mixon touchdown from 13 yards out, and then Fairbairn misses the extra point. So it was 13-12. But then the Chiefs responded. They went 13 plays, 77 yards down the field. And there was an unnecessary roughness penalty that was called in this game, where you had 2 Texans defenders collide with each other with Mahomes underneath because he was sliding, and they called an unnecessary roughness penalty. And Mahomes I got great. I mean, he did get hit, but I mean, it was more of just the 2 Texans defenders colliding with each other. So they called that. So that put them in better field position. They went for it on 4th down later in the drive, and then eventually Mahomes connected with Travis Kelce for an 11-yard touchdown as he's getting tackled. He connects with Kelce, and that made it 20-12. The Texans, they went for it on 4th and 10 from the Chiefs' 44-yard line, and Stroud took a big sack. Actually, the Chiefs ended up punting, so it didn't really amount to anything. But later in the game, Butker kicked another field goal. That made it 23-12. The Texans then ended up fumbling. They went for it on... Actually, no. The field goal ended up getting blocked. Yeah, so really, you had a missed extra point, missed field goal, a blocked field goal, and then for people that had, some wagers on this game, the spread was 9.5, and it was looking good until, and one of my friends, was affected by this. The Chiefs ended up, punting, but they held on to the ball. The punter ended up holding on to the ball, and he ran out of the end zone for a safety, so that made it 23-14. So, if you had the Chiefs plus 9.5, or actually no, Texans plus 9.5, you had to be happy, but if you were the other way, you had to be devastated on that bad beat. But yeah, the Chiefs get the win, 23-14. Mahomes, 16-25, 177 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Really didn't have a big game. That's the thing. Other than the penalties, there really was not much to talk about with this game. I mean, yes, C.J. Stroud got sacked 8 times, but there just really wasn't anything memorable about this game. Because the other 3 games, there was drama. This game, there really wasn't anything worth noting other than, I guess, the penalties that many people are complaining about. But on the ground, Chiefs only ran the ball for 50 yards. Kareem Hunt had 44 yards on the ground. Isaiah Pacheco only 18 yards on the ground. Mahomes had 14 yards on the ground. He had a 15-yard scramble in this game. Travis Kelce, a big day, 7 receptions for 117 yards and a touchdown. Xavier Worthy had 5 for 45. Noah Gray, 3 for 13. And Kareem Hunt, 1 for 2. Other than that, you had Marquise Brown, 2 targets, no receptions. DeAndre Hopkins, 1 target, no receptions. Isaiah Pacheco, 1 target, no receptions. Samaje Perine, 1 target for no receptions. Juju Smith-Schuster, 1 target, no receptions. So you really only had 4 guys involved in the passing game. 2 tight ends, a running back, and 1 receiver, Xavier Worthy. For the Chiefs defense, like I said, 8 sacks. We went over that. Butker, 3 for 3 on field goals, 2 for 2 on extra points. And then for the Texans, you had Stroud going 19-28 for 245 yards. Joe Mixon, 18 carries for 88 yards and a touchdown. Nico Collins had 5 receptions for 81 yards. Dalton Schultz, 4 for 63. Xavier Hutchinson, 4 for 52. John Mechie, 2 for 35. Texans defense, 3 sacks of Mahomes. Fairbairn went 0 for 1 on 0 for 1 on extra points and 2 for 4 on field goals. And yeah, Texans are going home. They also outgained the Chiefs 336 yards to 212, and they had the ball more than the Chiefs. They picked up more first downs than the Chiefs, but ultimately, they didn't have enough offensively in this game to put them over the top. They were shorthanded. No Tank Dell, no Stephon Diggs. C.J. Stroud was getting sacked. Took a lot of punishment in this game. Actually, got hurt at one point early on when he was scrambling, to pick up a first down. I think it was on the first drive of the game. But like I did say that, Stroud has to use his legs a little bit more. I think he throws well from the pocket, but that's something that, I thought he did a good job with in the Chargers game, and I thought, you're going to have to empty the tank against the Chiefs. And, they just missed opportunities, killer penalties. Some of them were kind of fluky. When you have Joe Buck and Troy Aikman complaining about the unnecessary roughness penalty, when Mahomes, got sandwiched by the two, well, didn't really get sandwiched, but you had the 2 Texans players colliding with each other, and they're complaining about the call, that's a problem. Now, there's no easy way to fix that. I know they implemented this replay assist, but the problem is, if you're reviewing every single play, the game is never going to end. And I understand that it's the Chiefs, and many people are suffering from Chiefs fatigue. And I'll admit, I'm one of those people. You'd like to maybe see different teams in it. I get it. Although, listen, we're going to see Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes match up against each other in the AFC Championship game once again, and just in the playoffs in general. So I'm okay with that. But I get it. People are tired of seeing the Chiefs. But the thing is, the Chiefs are a well-oiled machine. And Patrick Mahomes didn't have a big day, but they still won. They're a good team. They're a very good team. And, for the Texans, like I said, they were shorthanded. Offensive line, gave up 8 sacks to CJ Stroud. And hopefully next year they put it together. But this team has a very good defense. They have the quarterback. They got the weapons. I'm curious to see what they do next year. Will they maybe bring back Stephon Diggs? Because you're not going to have Tank Dell next year. So maybe, you bring back Diggs, you get him for cheap. I don't know. Or maybe he goes somewhere else. But you got 2 good pass rushers up front. You got a stud corner. They got stuff to build on. And I think they'll figure it out. And they play in a weak division on top of that. Are the Titans going to be good next year? Probably not. Are the Colts going to be good next year? I mean, we'll see. They're going to give it another go with Anthony Richardson? Probably. And what about the Jaguars? They don't have a head coach right now. Right now, I like the Texans to win the division. Maybe the other teams will be better next year, but right now, you still like the Texans. It's just, there's more they need to add to this team. But the defense kept them in the game. Give the defense credit. It's just the offense just didn't have enough. So we'll see how they bounce back next year. But listen, same story, different year when it comes to the Chiefs. They once again are in the AFC Championship Game, and we'll see if they advance to now their 3rd consecutive Super Bowl and possibly win their 3rd consecutive Super Bowl. The three-peat. Still on the table. Now, I had them winning the whole thing before the year started, so I'm going to stand by that. My Super Bowl prediction between the Lions and the Chiefs took a massive hit over the weekend, but we still have the team that I have winning the Super Bowl in it. So we'll see what happens from this weekend. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about this game. And again, any of the games that we talked about already, let me know your thoughts from them in the comments. So we are going to take our final break of the show, and then when we come back, we will also talk about the National Championship Game. We'll talk about Ohio State winning it and how that game kind of unfolded. So for one final time today, make sure to stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we're going to now get into talking about the National Championship Game from last night between Ohio State and Notre Dame. And Notre Dame made things a little bit interesting late, but ultimately Ohio State, kind of dominated this game in the first half, and they built up a big lead. And, it was kind of too much for Notre Dame to overcome. And they end up winning the National Championship Game. And the biggest thing from last night is, people in the media talking about how they were kind of counted out. They were counted out because of what happened the final week of the regular season against Michigan. Everything that unfolded there. And I know I've brought this up numerous times, but just that loss, that low-scoring, ugly game, 13-10, and then Michigan plants the flag, and you had these fights breaking out. It just was not a good look. So going into these playoffs, a lot of people were down on Ohio State, but they come out, they play really well against Tennessee, they beat Oregon, and at that point, I felt like, because I had Oregon winning the whole thing, I said it looks like Ohio State is going to be the team to beat, and they beat Texas. They play a close game with Texas. You had the signature play with Jack Sawyer running back the touchdown, to put them up by multiple scores at that point. When Texas is driving, the defense makes a stand, and then, like I said, Sawyer returns a touchdown when they go for it. And then in this game, it's kind of similar to what we saw from the first two playoff games where, they dominated in the first half. Notre Dame, they stepped up, and they tried to keep it close, and, the offense, did its best. They actually, the first drive of the game, similar to what the Texans did in the second half of the divisional game against the Chiefs, the game we just talked about, they put together an impressive drive, Notre Dame, because they took the ball to start, and they went right down the field. 18 plays, 75 yards, almost 10 minutes of time of possession down the field. They score a touchdown. They went for it on fourth down. Riley Leonard picks up the first down on a 3-yard run, and then later in the drive, he scores. Actually, they went for it on fourth down again. Riley Leonard picked up another first down to set him up, and then he scored the 1-yard touchdown. Actually, looked like he was hurt after, but of course he still, played and finished out the game. But that put them up 7-0. That was a statement right there. And the key for Notre Dame going into the game was keeping it close, not letting Ohio State pull away. And Ohio State, on their first 3 drives, actually, all were touchdowns. They went 11 plays, 75 yards on their first drive. Will Howard connected with Jeremiah Smith for a touchdown. That made it 7-7. Notre Dame punted. They went 3 and out pretty quickly. Ohio State, another drive. Quinshon Judkins, a 9-yard touchdown, make it 14-7. And then 21-7, Will Howard connected with Judkins for a 6-yard touchdown. And, they went 12 plays, 80 yards on that, 4.5 minutes almost. I was hoping that Notre Dame would maybe, hold them to 3. At least hold them to 3. But they scored another touchdown there. So, yeah, their offense was rolling in the first half. And then they scored a touchdown to open up the second half. So it was 28-7 at that point. It was as much as 31-7. So Ohio State did not punt until the fourth quarter. Notre Dame made it 31-15 at one point. They went for the 2. They got it. Riley Leonard connected with Greathouse, who had a big game, 6 receptions for 28 yards. Last couple weeks, he stepped up. He had over 100 yards receiving against Penn State, had 128 yards against Ohio State here. He had 2 touchdowns in the game. He stepped up. But yeah, so that made it 31-13. Like I said, they went for 2. They got it. So it was 31-15. So, okay, here we go. And then Ohio State ends up fumbling on their next drive. So Notre Dame goes down the field, and Mitch Jeter, who was the hero against Penn State, he ends up missing the field goal. They actually go for the field goal to try to get some points to make it, 31-18. And Mitch Jeter ends up missing. It hits off the upright. A 27-yarder. He ends up missing it. And Ohio State did end up punting, but they score a touchdown on the next drive, Notre Dame. They made it 31-23. They got the 2-point conversion again. Riley Leonard connected with Greathouse for 30 yards. This was on 3rd and 9. So, yeah, that made it 31-23. But then Will Howard had the throw of the game. It was 3rd and 11. They bring an all-out blitz, and he hits Jeremiah Smith, one-on-one coverage, 56 yards. That sets up a field goal. That made it 31-23, and that's all she wrote. Ohio State gets the win. They win the national championship in this new format. Will Howard went 17-21 for 231 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Ohio State ran the ball for over 200 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns by Quinshon Judkins. Will Howard had 57 yards on the ground. Travion Henderson had 49 yards on the ground. Jeremiah Smith, the big 56-yard reception. He had 5 receptions for 88 yards and a touchdown. Emeka Egbuka, he had 6 receptions for 64 yards. Junkins had the receiving touchdown in the game. Ohio State's defense, only 2 sacks of Riley Leonard in the game. And, he was solid last night. 22 of 31, 255 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He actually was their leading rusher. So, yeah, they really couldn't run the ball last night. Riley Leonard had 40 yards on the ground and a touchdown. And shout out to Jaden Greathouse, 6 receptions for 128 yards, 2 touchdowns. He came up big for them these last couple weeks. Just wasn't enough. Notre Dame's defense had 2 sacks. But this was huge for Ohio State. And it's kind of cool that I was able to see them in action this year in person. When they played Nebraska. Now, that was not their best game, but it's just cool to, kind of be a part of a little small part, very small part, microscopic part of their season, because it was a roller coaster. And they got it done. And, there were a lot of veterans on this team. This, takes a lot of pressure off of Ryan Day, their head coach. They got it done. For Notre Dame, props to them. They may have not had the star power that Ohio State has, but, they showed some fight in that second half, and they got it to a one-possession game. It's just, I think people question, the all-out blitz and leaving, one of the better receivers and Jeremiah Smith in one-on-one coverage, but that's what they did. Will Howard made a great throw, and they ended up coming up short. And you got to give Marcus Freeman a lot of credit. He's really turned this team around. These two teams, we talked about this. Ohio State had the bad loss to Michigan at the end of the year, and then you had Notre Dame. They lost to Northern Illinois by 2 points earlier in the season, but they were able to overcome all that. They both played in the national championship game. Ohio State gets the win. But Ohio State, many people said they're the better team. They were the better team, and they showed that last night. They built up a big lead. Notre Dame, they came up a little bit short. Had Ohio State not have built up this huge lead, who knows what would have happened. Maybe, Notre Dame's able to tie it. But they could have easily rolled over and just gave up. But no, they kept fighting. It was too much. It was too much of a deficit. But, props to Ohio State for getting the win, winning the national championship. For Notre Dame, listen, they're building something good over there with Marcus Freeman as the head coach. I actually wanted to look up the odds for next year for the national championship. Who are the favorites right now? And I'm doing this on the fly here, so just bear with me. So this is what we got right now. These are playoff championship odds. So these are the latest odds to win the 2026 national championship. And this is FanDuel. So we got Texas at plus 650, Georgia at plus 700, Alabama at plus 1600, Tennessee plus 1800, LSU at plus 2000, Ole Miss plus 2300, Texas A&M plus 3100, plus 4,000 for South Carolina, plus 5,000 for Florida, plus 5,000 for Auburn, plus 6,500 for Oklahoma. And Ohio State's not even there. So that just, because Ohio State's going to lose some pieces. But then also you look at DraftKings, Ohio State is plus 450, Texas plus 500, Georgia's plus 550, Oregon's plus 750, Penn State's plus 900. So it's going to be different depending on what sportsbook you use. But, we'll see how... We'll see how it goes, but the college football season is over. We only got 3 games left in the NFL season, and football will be over as a whole, and then it's, officially the off season. So, but let me know what you guys think about this game. So Ohio State wins 34-23. They are national champions. But let me know about what your thoughts are from this game in the comments. So that is pretty much it for the show for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to check out all the other shows as well. And we'll be back again tomorrow. Make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the video. Also, I apologize for the camera issues. Hopefully it's better tomorrow, but hey, they always happen. So until next time, I'm Kenneth Grunfelder signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet.